Mitzrayim that they went in fighting. They had to fight 7 wars just to get into the land. But even more than that, as we'll see today in our Midrash. We'll also look at a timeline. Not that we'll try to go through every one of them, but just to kind of touch bases on some things about the timeline that helps us understand that the history that we read in our history books in school include us. We just have not been included. So now I'm going to include us where we were during these different times. And some of the aspects we'll just point out, and when certain things happened. We'll also look at Haiti, which was one of the top economic countries, developed with big buildings and houses. It was called the Paris before Paris even happened. So they were directly the cause of a lot of wealth going into not only France, but France. They made them very wealthy. But France had so much wealth from Haiti that they were able to do import or export business because they were putting out so much sugar. And to this day, we have not obtained yet our 40 acres. We didn't even get a mule. This is something very awesome. It's a medallion. And from what I searched and started finding out is this is a memorial of where slavery kind of started, kind of breaking down the wall. And it was a case by a judge in Britain. I'll go ahead and start so that we can start from the beginning. Okay. The African diaspora, enslavement. African diaspora, or African or the diaspora, a Greek translation, dia between, through, cross. And what they did is they took 2 words and they put them together. One says, I sow, I scatter. The other says, between. The first mention of the diaspora or exile found in the Septuagint translated to mean, thou shalt be a diaspora or a diaspora, a dispersion, thank you, in all kingdoms of the earth. This was spoken by God to the Hebrews' original sense when the Hebrew Bible was translated into Greek. In the ancient Greece, the term diaspora means scattering. The term derives from the verb diaspora or diaspora, I scatter, to spread. And basically you can find this in Leviticus 26, Deuteronomy 28, Nehemiah, Jeremiah. Each of these are examples of diaspora, and where the Greek who used this to try to write some understanding, what they did is they took 2 parts of a word, put them together to try to come to the best understanding of what was being said. So, in what was being said is, I scatter you, I sow you. So this is what diaspora means, and what they were doing to try to capture the essence of what they were trying to translate. World history. See if I can get someone to read so I can kind of in and out. Someone who's not eating. Can you read that for us? From here.
The African diaspora.
Nice and loud.
The African diaspora was the movement of Africans and their descendants to places throughout the world, historically applied in particular to the descendants of the Africans who were enslaved and shipped to all continents, including the America by way of the Arabic and Atlantic slave trade, with the largest population in Brazil.
Okay, so this explains to us that the African diaspora, the largest sowing is actually Brazil. We'll take a better look at that in just a moment. And one of the things that I found that there were certain entities that were negotiating contracts, let's say, and I'm going to be nice with that. These were contracts that were made for the spreading, the capture first, and delivering workers. In this PowerPoint, I just want to look at some particulars to show what was going on. What was the environment? What was happening here? Stories about Songhai, the wealthiest African king in the world. Who was Songhai? I have an African book that speaks about him, and there was a lot of word that went from people who were going into Africa, were getting information about this king who was more wealthy than any other king in the world. He had so much gold that he was the most wealthy king in the world. So, what did that do? That sparked an interest in those who were after what? The gold. So what did they do? They went into Africa. And Dominique Henrique was one of the people who was actually, he was a royalty from Spain. Yeah, he was from Spain. And he went, from Portugal. He went to try to lay claim to some of this gold. So 1441 AD, he set out for Africa to find some of this gold. Now, the Islamic Berbers brought back the first slaves to the Iberian Peninsula. What this is also showing that the Arabic nations have already been enslaving. And actually, from some of my research, I found that during the 8th century, they were already going into Africa, trying to convert people over to Islam. You did not convert. They captured you, brought you out, made you slaves, and over time, you either converted or they killed you, one or the other. The Spaniards and Portuguese were all well aware of the strength and the qualities of Negroes as cheap labor. Now, this one speaks to in the different continents or the different places where they found people to enslave, a lot of times they died from the disease that followed the European trappers. So the natives that was here, and this is further in, but they were also in some of the Caribbean islands. When they enslaved them, times they would start dying out and therefore in need of replenishing. So at some point, the Spaniards and Portuguese had made a decision on the best quality of workers were African descent. So that's why I have that there. There were 12 Negroes captured who were taken back to Portugal as proof, and the European decided that they would cut out the middlemen by no longer dealing with the Arabic traders. So what Dominic Henry did is he took 2 black slaves and gave them to the Pope as proof that we have a rich commodity, that if we were to venture into this area, that we would have, 1, a very strong, renewable people, residual, because basically in this 12, what I found is they had both men, women, boys, and girls. So they had men and women to reproduce now. They had boys and girls to grow up and to work the field and also reproduce. So as they reproduced, they multiplied as workers. Looking at the diaspora, if you can see this map very well, if you can see this good, these lines are showing basically out of Africa, coming out of Africa into all the nations, South America, North America, Europe, and these lines are basically giving us directions as to where each of the slave ships were directed to. What are we to be called? A byword, Deuteronomy 28:30. You shall marry a wife, and another shall lie with her. 32. Your sons and daughters shall be given to another people. 33. The fruit of your ground and all your labor shall be eaten up by a nation which you do not know. And you shall always be oppressed and crushed. Just based on these 3, if we were to put up a checklist, can these 3 at least be checked off so far? That we married, even though we married, the slave master went into the bedchambers. And during that time, it didn't matter where you were, because all he did was told you to get out or just hang around. It didn't matter because he was the master. So we can check that off. I won't dig too far into that because I got a lot here to go. Your sons and daughters sold to others. In slavery, that's what they do. You have a child, that child gets to stay with you for a certain amount of years, and it is auctioned off. They have prices for different age range, prices for female, price for male. Each had its own desire. Women were good for multiplying, bringing in more. Men were good for working. They were workhorses, and they were strong. They could run, so they were shackleless, so they couldn't run too far. If you've seen Roots, if you haven't, it's available. It's out there. Deuteronomy 28:36 37, Yahweh shall cause you, and your king, who rise up over you, whom you shall raise up over you, to go to a nation which you have not known. You and your fathers, and you shall serve other gods. An astonishing little proverb and a byword among all the peoples where Yahweh shall lead you. Where Yahweh shall lead you. 41. You shall father sons and daughters, and they shall not be with you, for they shall go into captivity. Can we check these off as well? As to our history, each of these do apply. Now, sure, we can argue the same argument for other cultures because it has happened to other cultures. The only thing I'm trying to get you to see now, that it also applies to us. And this is just one of my pictorials just to remind us as to how we came. The first side on, and I believe it would be on your left, is a picture of the ship. And someone came up with a design to get more for the space. So this is what that is. You got the top section, which is on top, and then down below. And each of these are laid side by side, head to foot or head to head, whichever made more space and more sense. And the next picture, of course, is showing, you know, a better, closer picture as to chains. And we'll get to that in just a moment. But if the salt becomes tasteless, it is only good to be thrown out and trodden down by men. Genesis chapter 15 verse 13 says you will be enslaved and mistreated for 400 years. This has not concluded as of yet, because there is a people who are still mistreated. Even though the emancipation happened, but there's still mistreatment. We've made it to the White House and still being mistreated. Matthew 5:13. And there's several other scriptures, and of course what I've done is try not to overload, but there's, if you ever want to get more scriptures, I have them. More witnesses. Slave ships, Deuteronomy 28. And if you notice, these are the blessings and the curses. Therefore, shall you serve your enemy, which Yahweh shall send against you in hunger and in thirst and in nakedness and in want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. Yahweh shall bring a nation against thee from far, from the ends of the earth, as swift as the eagles. A nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. A nation of fierce countenance, which shall not regard the person of old, nor shall show favor to their young. And Yahweh shall bring you back to Mizraim in ships, by a way of which I said to you, you are never to see it again. And there you shall be sold to your enemies as male and female slaves, but no one to buy you. So, yoke of iron. If you've seen this, the previous picture, how they were shackled, and then from your own research or history classes, you may have seen the the wood, and I purposely didn't put a whole lot of them out because I wanted to be softer for our younger children. And I'll just explain. They would have this bar. It would have a Y, and that part would be attached to your neck, which there would be another person in front of you attached to his neck, and the shackles. He walked, you walk. They walk, you all walk. And something Revis and I was listening to doing some more study material. Another guy was speaking about how a principle that I didn't think about. He said, you have to realize something, that they're not going to stop for you. If you get sick, they're not stopping to the point A to point B to where they need to be. They're not going to stop if you get a stomach ache. If you're hungry, they didn't stop. Hungry, in need of all, they didn't stop. They were trying to make it to the ship, bringing you out. If you needed to go to the bathroom, there was no on-side restroom stops. They kept going. So whatever you need to do, and if you have a weak stomach, sorry. Whatever you need to do, you just need to do it as you walk. So the person in back of you was walking through. So you can see the sickness that was already emanating from the conditions in need of all. They didn't stop because they needed to get themselves out of hostile territory and onto the ship. And based on my own research from one brother, I won't speak too much about him because I do have him in here. One brother wrote a book, and he told of his captivity. He said it was some of his relatives. When his parents were out in a way, maybe, I don't know, maybe out hunting, I don't know. But he said his parents were away. Him and his little sister were left at home. And familiar kin came, took them, and gave them to another people. And then from that people to another people. And from that people to another people. So they kept changing hands and changing hands, getting on a ship, and then change hands again. So they had no way of knowing where they were. They couldn't pick up a phone and call home. This wasn't that kind of time. We didn't have cell phones during that time. So I'm just trying to get you to see that there was an atrocity that happened to a people, to a great number of people. The 16 highest populations of African diaspora. Brazil, number 1. United States, number 2. Colombia, number 3. Haiti, Dominican Republic. France, Jamaica, Venezuela, United Kingdom, Cuba, Italy, Puerto Rico, Peru, Canada, Ecuador, Trinidad, Tobago. I don't know that you can see all of these numbers.
It's in billions, right?
A little louder.
It's in billions, right?
Yes. Well, these are. I'll read number 1. This is 85,783,143.
It's more than 30.
Now, these are taken from the 2010 census. These are Africans who are in Brazil at this time. This is their population of African descent. When you see on their commercials, and I'm going to stop bringing this in. When you see commercials, you don't see dark people.
Nope.
You see people of fair skin that would even look very European if you didn't look carefully. And there's a person who's done this research. There's a professor of African Studies out of New Haven, is it Oxford? Not Oxford. Yale. He's went over to these different countries to study them, to talk to the people, and to get the essence. And one of the things that he enlightened me to was that what they do is they use a word that he's coined is whiten.
Right.
They will bring in from Spain, from Europe, a group 600,000 and more, and grant them visas to go into a country such as Brazil and to just live. They give them visas, work, they give them jobs, and they give them homes. That's like a start. So people were like, yes, and they go in, singles, and they were married into the darker people. To whiten up their generations, and over generations, they will become lighter and lighter. And now, what they have done is created a society more desirable to commercial enterprise. Okay? So, I mean, take me for instance. My mother, her family is a light-skinned people, but my father is dark. So half of us, out of 8 children, were dark, and the other half were light. You know, my first cousin, and our parents are sister and brother, and this is the representation of what my family is. This is what happened between black and white. But there's something very interesting that happened in that as well. So, and I'll mention that in just a moment. So who are we? Who are the chosen people? The bloodline of Father Abraham. Why are we not chosen? This is the question that I asked before. Father, before we came into this walk, why didn't you choose us? It seems that you love us. You've given us strength beyond belief. We've become, we're really like a Superman, because we can run, we can jump. You just put us in any sport, we will take the lead. You put us in any intellectual, we will take it. I mean, you got people who are, what is his name? Ben Carson. The other guy, Vivian Thomas, who can do heart surgery with his eyes closed. And when the doctors would see him and who he was teaching, who never gave him a degree until he was old and ready to die. Now an honorary degree after he done taught all of their people coming through their college. His eyes was closed, and they're looking at him inside the heart and said, "Oh, excuse me, but your eyes are closed." He said, "That's okay. It's like being at home. You can cut your lights off, but you still know your familiar surroundings." He said, I'm familiar with this. So it can only be Yahweh who does something like this. Only through Yahweh. He was not taught by the extreme educators, but he taught them. He got a little hand in something and able to see a little bit, and he just took it and just went on with it. Okay, let me stop. So why were we chosen? We were. How are you? Number 3. Why do African Americans suffer blood disorders such as hypertension, diabetes, sickle cell? Visiting the sins of the benign of the parents, man, woman, fathers, mothers, to the children of the 3rd and 4th generation. Deuteronomy chapter 28. It's all in us. The blessings and the curses. So what is the confusion with time? Daniel 7:25. He will change the laws and my appointed times. Question 5. Can we resolve time now? Yes. Yahweh gives us certain clues to recalculate times by adding all the begats. So in other words, all of those begats we used to pass up, that's your timeline. So anytime you see something dealing with time, on the 11th year, the 1st month, on the 24th year, the 3rd month, all of these things are a timeline, and we take the time to figure them out. And this is what I do. This is how Yahweh has opened up a lot of information for me based on time. So I won't go through showing that at this time. You've seen me do it a number of times based on when they came out of Mizraim, when they went into the Promised Land, looking at all the results of the Promised Land and seeing what was lacking, seeing what was needed. All of these things give me clues that some things have not yet been fulfilled. And one of them is the 400-year prophecy of return. It has not yet been fulfilled. And I'm going to stop here. This one goes into a little more in depth. Let me just kind of run through it and maybe I'll start here. The prophet Hosea married a harlot. This is a story of us. A people who were first idolaters, then went into harlotry. I think that's a better word. We were brought down. Our power were brought down. And we read about the book of Numbers in the 25th chapter where Balaam brought in the curse. He couldn't curse them, but he would end up blessing them. And by the time he truly figured it out, he brought in women that were not of them. And just realize this. Who are the warriors from age 25 to 50? That was who were on the line to fight. They brought in the women. And let's look at the age 20, did I say 25? 20. Age 20 to 50. You had a 30-year gap there. That age range was the fighting men. They were also priests. But let's just for example look at that 20-year-old age bracket and say, let's just hypothetically say, have not yet married. Let's say. You bring in these women who are enticements, let's say. These men are bound to fall. So when we get to Revelation that talks about a people, the 144,000 who were not defiled by women, let's go from that 20-year age bracket below. They were not out there. Yahweh brought them into the land. 40 years as total, and we'll read that as well today. But going into the land, Yahweh makes a statement that says, these are they who came through the wilderness and were not defiled by the women. More so than women, meaning that they were opened up to other gods, because once the women made their move, they were able to bring in their gods. And you'll see in the reading where they were joined unto them when they took the other gods by bowing down to them. So they were defiled by the women. And this generation that made it into the Promised Land were not defiled. So we, according to Matthew's 24 and 25, really goes into this, talks about 10 virgins. Those 10 virgins basically are not defiled. We are the descendants of them who were in the wilderness. And when he comes back to get his 144,000, he will name them as well himself. He will write the name of Yahweh in the foreheads of 144,000. We will never make the mistake again as to his name, how to pronounce it, because 144,000 times his name will be proclaimed in the earth. And we who are alive, they have been chosen as part of that 144,000, are the sons and daughters of those who crossed over into the land. Can we give Father a praise?